Hi, chosen ones. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Mikkel. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Everyone has had a joyous day full of abundance. I'm going to talk about the life of Dorothy Daindridge. We're going to watch a documentary about her life. I loved her movie. Halle Berry played her in a movie. And her and Halle Berry is both from Ohio and was born in the same hospital. I think they both are from Cleveland, Ohio, and both of them was born in the both of them was born in the same hospital in Cleveland, Ohio. I think it was Cleveland, Ohio. But both of them was born in the same hospital in Ohio. Her story had a lot of challenges. Well, back in her time, a lot of black entertainers faced discrimination. They were not treated equally as the white entertainers, and they had to put up with and go through so much. But they paved the way for a lot of black people today. It was a tough struggle, a long fought battle. It was a terrible fight that they had to keep fighting for equal justice. But I loved her story, but it has ups and downs. And ups and downs part, it was sad. I mean, I felt for her with some of her ups and downs. I really felt for her. So the we're going to watch the documentary of Dorothy Daindridge. Here goes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Action!
You're watching Biography here on A&E. She performed in hotels where she was not allowed to spend the night, and she turned down stereotypical black roles. Her struggle for acceptance in white Hollywood would pave the way for many to follow. But the uphill battle of her career would soon take its toll on her personal life. When Dorothy was asked about racial prejudice, she replied, "It is such a waste. It makes you half alive. It gives you nothing. It takes away."
Pardon me, boy. Yes, yes. Is that the Chattanooga choo-choo? That's the Chattanooga choo-choo. On track 29. 29. Uh-huh. That's on the Tennessee line.
When you think of Dorothy Daindridge, think of her beauty, her personality, and she was a good actress. With a combination of all these things, made her in a class all by herself.
Get over where you belong.
Just what I'm doing. I heard about...
A lot of black entertainers had so much talent in singing and dancing and acting. I mean, a lot of black entertainers, they could dance their tail off. They tap dance so good. And I'd be like, how they do that? I'd be like, even practice. I don't think I could still do all that. And a lot of them could sing real good. A lot of them had great singing voices and good acting skills. Funny. It made you laugh and really entertain you. And Dorothy Daindridge, she was so beautiful. She could sing, act. I mean, she was the whole package. On the outside, it appeared that way, but on the inside, she was very broken.
Dorothy, when I was 19 years old, I heard about Carmen Jones, and I wanted to know who this woman was and how could she be so beautiful and be so talented, and I didn't know who she was.
One didn't know Dorothy. Off that screen, she was sort of like smoke.
She was Hollywood's first African-American dramatic female movie star. She was a powerful force on the stage and screen, whose talent and international appeal garnered her unprecedented popularity and even a Best Actress Oscar nomination. But although she was beautiful and sophisticated, Dorothy Daindridge was a study in contradictions. Plagued with self-doubt and bent on self-destruction, hers was a turbulent and tragic life.
She should be the most successful movie star in the world. But she was a black woman at the wrong time.
In the summer of 1922, in the comfortable colored section of Cleveland, Ohio, a pregnant 23-year-old housewife named Ruby Daindridge abandoned her mild-mannered husband, Cyril.
Ruby Daindridge was very outgoing, very ambitious, very aggressive woman. And Cyril Daindridge was basically a quiet man, rather introverted, easygoing. And the two of them, for some reason, they hit it off and they married, but it was not a happy marriage.
Taking their 15-month-old daughter, Vivian, Ruby secretly settled in a nearby but poor neighborhood. And on November 9th, 1922, Dorothy Jean Daindridge was born at Cleveland City Hospital. Over the next few months, Ruby moved frequently within the black community to avoid Cyril, who was determined to locate his daughters.
Dorothy missed a father relationship. Her mother would tell her terrible things about the father. She said that the father didn't want them, that he had kicked them out of the house, and that he was partial to his mother.
Ruby soon found employment as a maid and devoted her free time to her.
Dorothy Daindridge's mother, I mean, she left her husband. She left her husband and made her daughters think that he was no good. I mean, she just left her husband. She took her daughter's father out their lives. So far, what we're hearing, it doesn't say anything bad their father did. She just left him. She just packed up and left him and took him out of his daughter's lives. She took her two daughters' father out their lives. But there's some deep rooted issues inside of her. She has some deep rooted issues and skeletons in her closet as to why she left him. It's going to come out, and when it come out, I'm going to come back and discuss it.
Real passion, becoming an entertainer. She found an audience at her local church where she sang and recited poetry for the congregation. By the time Dorothy was 4, she and her 6-year-old sister Vivian were also performing at Sunday services. Ruby struck up an intense friendship with the talented musician Geneva Williams and invited her to move in with her and her daughters.
It was a sexual relationship between Ruby and Neva. Neither one ever, I don't believe, used the word lesbian. I just don't think they did. I think as little girls they noticed a lot between the two women.
Ruby took on the role of breadwinner, and Neva was given full charge of the children's daily regime of singing, dancing, and acrobatic lessons, as well as their discipline.
The two of them would talk it.
There is. Their mother was a lesbian in the closet. She was secretly a gay woman. That's the reason why she just left her husband for no reason. She was a lesbian hiding in the closet. On the down low, she was a gay woman. So that was her secrecy of what she was. And that's the reason why she left her husband. I think she got married for front. She got married and had children. It was to probably fool her family. She did not want her family to know she was a lesbian. So she was hiding from her family that she was a gay woman. So she got married, had children, all for a front. It was to fool her husband. It was to fool her family, society, and she fooled him because she fooled her husband. He didn't know she was gay, so she fooled him too. It was just all one big cover up for her being gay.
Night, and one would say, well, we didn't get a spanking today, and the other would say, the day's not over.
Under Neva's skillful coaching, within a year, Dorothy and Vivian were touring the South, billed as the Wonder Children. And soon they were earning enough money to support the entire family. Dorothy's beauty and beguiling manner made her a particular crowd pleaser. But life on the road was hard on the girls, and Dorothy began to develop a fear of live performances. Her lack of proper education only added to her growing anxiety and insecurity.
Dorothy didn't stay in school long enough because she worked and would interrupt her schooling. She fooled everybody. She couldn't read for a long time. She memorized everything.
When the stock market crash of 1929 ushered in the Great Depression, black communities across America were hit hard, and the Wonder Children were forced into early retirement. But for Ruby Daindridge, it was simply a minor setback. In 1929, William Fox Studios released Hearts in Dixie, the first Hollywood musical film to feature an all-black cast. And Ruby was convinced that there would be more work for talented black performers. With Diva by her side, Ruby Daindridge...
It said that Dorothy could not read good. Her mother, she didn't really have her in school because she wanted her to be performing and making money. It was just sad because she was not getting a good education and was learning how to read and have a business head.
Packed up her family and boarded once again, Dorothy was a standout. Sisters earned a coveted booking at New York's famous Cotton Club. Groomed to appeal to an older audience, the three glamorous divas opened to rave reviews.
The Daindridge sisters had a very mellow sound. Dorothy sang lead. Dorothy usually was in the middle. They really were, in a sense, precursors to the Supremes. It was a good act.
Also booked at the Cotton Club were the Nicholas brothers. The phenomenal song and dance team was young, handsome, and hugely famous. Both brothers took a special interest in the stunning 15-year-old Dorothy.
All of a sudden, I see these three lovely girls come into the club. And my brother and I looked at each other and said, "Did you see what I see?" I said, "Yes, I do." I said, "They were all lovely." But my brother and I had our eyes on Dorothy Daindridge. She was beautiful. Just beautiful. We used to not go out a lot, and then, well, not too much because she was restricted a little bit. We had a thing for each other, I must say, right from the beginning.
Harold Nicholas was only 17 and already a show business veteran as well as a notorious ladies' man when he and Dorothy met. But Dorothy had little time for romance, as her 12 years of hard work were now paying off. In May of 1939, the Daindridge sisters, with Neva as their chaperone, sailed to London for an engagement at the famous Palladium, and they dazzled a sophisticated European audience. But by now, Dorothy was becoming worn down by the stress of live performances, as well as by Neva's overbearingly harsh rules, which included taping down the 16-year-old's breasts to conceal her now shapely figure. Neva felt threatened by Dorothy's burgeoning sexuality, and she became obsessed with the matter of Dorothy's virginity.
Dorothy had come home and Neva was suspicious and wanted to examine her. It really was the equivalent of a rape.
Geneva threw her down on the bed, and Dottie got up and gave her a good punch. She knocked her on the floor at one point, and that finished the physical abuse.
Finally standing up.
Her mother, lesbian lover, was abusive to her daughters. She was strict, taping down their breasts and trying to check and see if they were still virgins. This woman was abusive and off her rockers. She was nuts. But Dorothy stood up for herself. She stood up and gave her one good punch. I'm glad that she stood up for herself and stopped that woman from abusing her. I like that part of the story. I like hearing that.
Herself and declaring her independence from the woman who had been her mother's live-in lover, Dorothy was empowered for the first time in her life. Upon returning to the United States, the blossoming teenager decided it was time to go solo, and not just as a singer, but as an actress. In 1940, she won a role in the highly successful Los Angeles stage production of Meet the People. Louisiana, starring John Wayne. But her
It's buffering. I hate when that happens.
By the tender age of 18, it seemed as if all Dorothy Daindridge's dreams were about to come true. But even a talented young performer like Dorothy couldn't predict the lofty heights she would scale and the price she would have to pay for stardom.
You're watching Dorothy Daindridge on Biography. A&E's look at Dorothy Daindridge continues here on Biography.
By 1941, Dorothy's career was taking off. She had established herself as a dynamic new musical performer, appearing in several low-budget movies and starring in a series of soundies. These short musical films, which exploited Dorothy's obvious physical assets, were shown on jukeboxes equipped with tiny screens, and they were the forerunners to today's music videos.
With a Harlem touch, he was raised on local weed. He's what you call a swing half-breed, singing his go-go, boogie in the strangest way. From a
Now confident in her career, Dorothy was ready to set a wedding date with her longtime boyfriend, Harold Nicholas. On September 6, 1942, just 8 weeks shy of her 20th birthday, Dorothy and Harold were wed. But married life was not as blissful as Dorothy had hoped.
He always has his golf clubs with him, and that was almost like his first love. And Dorothy said to me, "Your brother thinks more of golf than he does of me."
Dorothy soon found herself vying for Harold's attention and discovered that golf was not the only thing that kept her husband away from home.
I chased the ladies quite a bit myself, you know. I think I was too young to be married, really, at that age. I think that was, my trouble.
Dorothy spent most of her free time with her sister-in-law and best friend, Geraldine Pate Nicholas, a beautiful, educated woman with a lively sense of humor.
We were good friends from the start. She realized that I wished her well. She was just sweet and generous.
Because she got married to one of the Nicholas brothers, Harold Nicholas. And the marriage wasn't what she thought it was. She probably thought it was going to be all peaches and cream and really happy. But he was her first love. And with your first love, you always get infatuated and think everything is going to be so perfect. But it was what she thought it was going to be, because trouble was coming down the road in their marriage. It was soon going to be paradise. It was soon going to be trouble in paradise, because she was already fighting for his attention. He playing golf all the time, and she said that he liked golf more than her. So she was constantly trying to get his attention, so that was a problem right there.
And lovely.
In 1942, the up-and-coming actress won minor roles in such films as Lucky Jordan, Drums of the Congo, and Hit Parade of 1943. But the only role that really interested her was that of wife and mother. When the newlywed learned she was pregnant, she believed her prayers had been answered.
Dorothy was willing to give up her career. Certainly, she would have been happy to just be a housewife and raise her children.
On September 1st, 1943, in her 9th month of pregnancy, Dorothy began experiencing severe labor pains. Believing this to be just another false alarm, Harold left his wife with Geraldine and went off to play a round of golf. For hours, Jerry heeded her friend's agonized pleas to wait for her husband's return until she finally took matters into her own hands.
We had to go in the neighborhood to find a car, and we finally found one after an hour or so and got her to the hospital. But it was rather late, and the baby had already started coming.
The following day, Carolyn Suzanne Nicholas was born. Baby Lynn was the center of her parents' universe and brought domestic contentment to the Nicholas household. But by the time Lynn was 2, it was clear to everyone that the toddler was not developing or behaving like a normal child.
She was so very troubled. She had tantrums. She didn't know who her father was, her mother. She couldn't recognize relationships. Harold couldn't cope with it.
Detached and withdrawn, Harold left Dorothy to search for answers to their daughter's mysterious condition alone.
It was hard on her, being there with the kid by herself. Dorothy was going to all types of doctors and things, you know. So it was pretty rough.
When doctors determined that Lynn was permanently retarded due to a lack of oxygen to the brain at birth, Dorothy was devastated. The nagging guilt and her rapidly deteriorating marriage led her to psychiatric counseling and a growing dependency on prescription sedatives.
She wasn't getting along with Harold.
That is so sad. It's sad to find out that your child is retarded. It's so sad to find that out. I know it was very painful and hard on her. And Harold, he was not a strong man to step up and try to make his wife feel better about the situation. He was young, ashamed, and did not know how to handle the situation. I think he was lost. But because he was not a strong man to really pick his wife up, their marriage, it crumbled more.
And she couldn't tolerate he's staying out for a couple of days or so, and she just took too many pills. And we had to take her to the hospital, and they pumped her stomach, and the next day she was okay.
Dorothy denied the overdose was an attempt
An overdose.
at suicide and instead blamed it on carelessness. But when she was found several more times in a dangerously over-medicated state, it was clear that her poised exterior was hiding an emotionally crippled soul. With her daughter's illness no longer a mystery, Dorothy was forced to face the fact that her marriage to Harold Nicholas was a failure. After a 7-year union, Dorothy asked Harold for a divorce.
I take the blame for it because I was not man enough to stand up, and I wanted to be a man too young.
The financing of Lynn's care became her mother's total responsibility. The 6-year-old needed round-the-clock supervision, and Dorothy had no choice but to find a full-time caregiver for Lynn to live with. Such a necessity was expensive, so Dorothy concentrated on advancing her career. In 1948, she became one of the first black students at the Actors Lab in Los Angeles, and she flourished in the creative, liberal environment where she honed her craft and became friends with other aspiring actors like Anthony Quinn. But when Dorothy danced with Quinn at an Actors Lab benefit, a scandal sprang out of their innocent interracial frolic. Powerful Hollywood columnist Hedda Hopper reported in the LA Times that the community was shocked at the sight of dancing between whites and Negroes where one and all could see. Disgusted and defiant, Dorothy's response.
Yes, her marriage is over. I mean, she might as well have divorced him because he wasn't really showing her enough affection. He wasn't being strong about their daughter situation, and she got so stressed out that she was taking overdoses and trying to kill herself. Everyone can't take stress. Understand and get that. Because some people can't take stress, sometimes they try to do suicide. Sometimes they just try to end it all. Some people see suicide as the only way out, and it's sad. It's sad that some people see suicide as the only way out. It breaks my heart to know that some people go through this.
The racial slur was printed in the and at the exclusive Café de Paris in London. MCA, one of Hollywood's most powerful talent agencies, signed Daindridge as a client and booked her in a series of successful television appearances, including Ed Sullivan's Toast of the Town.
It'll keep you humming and a strumming like, yes it will, I know it will. But from where I was looking, turn up the heat and start some cooking. Yes, you some love, and if some loving comes your way, and if you find somebody you just right.
Dorothy Daindridge was reaching heights no other African-American actress had reached before. But there were still more boundaries to cross and new barriers to break.
That's a good thing.
It's so sad about all the
Las
barriers.
Vegas.
It's sad about all the barriers the black entertainers had to go through. It makes no sense about this racism mess. It was crazy. But the powers that be, and dark forces that control this matrix, they're behind all this racism and division and they were doing the same mess back then. Just like they is playing games now, they're playing games back then with deceiving people, the rulers of this world, the demons that rule this world, and the elites. They were in control back then, just like they are still in control now. They were tricking and deceiving people and keeping up lies in the matrix back back during that time. So, and back during that time where they're keeping up lies and deception in the matrix, back then they're still keeping up lies and deception in the matrix in this time and day now that we are living in.
In the 1950s, Las Vegas was a segregated town, and black performers were barred from residing in the hotels or using public elevators and dining rooms.
Vegas was a very interesting situation there for any black performer. It didn't matter how famous you were, how big your salary was. There was a very, very sharp line drawn about where you could and could not go.
When the popular songstress demanded a room, the Last Frontier temporarily lifted its ban on black guests. But when Daindridge threatened to use the swimming pool, hotel management discovered an immediate need to drain it for repairs.
So this was what she was confronted with. She went out on stage and she was a goddess. And then when the performance was over, it was back doors, freight elevators, or in this case, it was the thing of not using a swimming pool.
While in Las Vegas, Dorothy became romantically involved with a handsome young actor named Peter Lawford. But their interracial love affair was doomed from the start.
She was very fond of him, but he told her in no uncertain terms that he didn't have any big trust fund. He was totally dependent on what work he got with Rat Pack and people like this, and that they could not marry because he could not work, nor could she.
Though she was loved and admired by thousands of fans, Dorothy's self-esteem was crumbling from a string of failed romances. Lonely and depressed, she turned once again to alcohol and prescription drugs. But as before, work provided the distraction that Dorothy so desperately needed. In 1953, Hollywood was buzzing with news of a big-screen production of Carmen Jones, the all-black film adaptation of Bizet's classic opera. Dorothy knew the coveted title role was a star-maker, but the film's notoriously tyrannical director, Otto Preminger, wouldn't even consider her for the part. But with dogged determination, the 31-year-old actress engineered an interview with the otherwise disinterested director.
He looked at her and he said to her that every time he saw her, it was Saks Fifth Avenue. And he didn't really see this earthy Carmen. Daindridge was angry. She had to get this part. She went to Max Factor's, the great makeup place in California, and worked on a new look for her hair, the tousled dark hair, a darker eye makeup, the mouth even more sensuous. It said that when she walked in, Preminger said, "It's Carmen."
Once again co-starred with Harry Belafonte, Dorothy played...
She had to fight for her role as Carmen Jones because Otto Preminger did not see her as Carmen Jones. I love that film. I got the movie here. I used to watch it all the time. I like to watch a lot of oldies movies. I like oldies movies and oldies music. I like the film Carmen Jones. It's a sad ending. I hated the ending, but overall, it was it was funny and it was a good film. But she fought for her role. She fought for the role of Carmen Jones. She fought it and she got it. She was determined to get it, and she made it happen.
A tempestuous femme fatale who seduces and ultimately destroys both herself and her lover. Although Daindridge and Belafonte were both accomplished singers, their voices were dubbed by trained operatic vocalists. Nevertheless, nothing could detract from Daindridge's mesmerizing and sensual performance.
When your lover decides to fly, there ain't no door that you can close. She just picks you a quick goodbye and flicks the salt from a tail and goes. If you listen, then you'll get taught. And here's your lesson for today. If I chase you, then you'll get caught. And once I got you, I go my way.
Daindridge's and Belafonte's sizzling performances were destined to make them America's first black sex symbols.
Don't you trust yourself? And we all felt.
Well, just like back in the day, a lot of entertainers have to sell their soul and do things to get ahead now in the entertainment industry. It doesn't matter what it is: movies, music, sports, modeling, anything that involves money, famous chefs, anything that involves money in Hollywood. You have to sell your soul and do things to make it, to advance your career. You have to do the greater things to keep your money and get richer. Well, it's the same way back then. The powers that be made them do the same thing back then. So all the old entertainers, they had to do the same thing that the entertainers have to do today to achieve success and fame and money in Hollywood. Hollywood is a dark road. It's a bad turn to go down. It's a bad street to enter. Hollywood is the city of angels. It's called Los Angeles, means the city of lost angels. Los Angeles means lost angels. So it's the city of lost angels. And it's a city of fallen, demonic, evil angels. Fallen, demonic, evil angels run Hollywood. And that's why it's such a dark and evil place to want to be in.
Long overdue.
At the age of 32, Dorothy Daindridge had earned the respect of her peers and public acclaim far in excess of her dreams. But the love and emotional stability she ached for remained just beyond her grasp. In 1955, Dorothy's Academy Award nomination catapulted her to a new level of celebrity, and her exclusive engagements were now earning her up to $3,500 a week in clubs like the M.
Okay, so she's the first African American woman to be nominated for lead actress at the Academy Awards. She got it, but I think they gave it to Grace Kelly. She did good at Carmen Jones. She deserved that Academy Award, but back then, they're not going to give it to a black actress. So they cheated her. She deserved it, but she was cheated out of that Academy Award.
Fire room in New York's Waldorf Astoria Hotel. Dorothy was also in the midst of an intense love affair with Carmen Jones director Otto Preminger. Although Preminger was separated from his wife, he was still a legally married man. But Dorothy hoped that this time things would work out in her favor.
He was wonderful to her. He was controlling. He took over her life for a time, insisted that she only wear beige and white. They'd go to Europe together. He felt freer in Europe. He was afraid of his position in the film industry. He would have had trouble with any out-and-out relationship.
The dictatorial Preminger insisted Dorothy accept only starring roles, forcing her to turn down offer after offer, until eventually her phone stopped ringing. At 33, Dorothy was disenchanted and depressed, and knew she had to face the fact that Otto would never divorce and marry her. After a 2-year affair, she abruptly ended the relationship. By 1956,
It said that Otto Preminger was using her. He was never going to leave his wife for her because she was black, he was white, and at that time there cannot be no successful interracial relationships. At that time it was impossible. So even if he loved her, and he was a top director, so in his high position he could not leave his white wife and be with her. And also heard that Dorothy Daindridge was pregnant by him, and he made her get abortion. Yeah, I heard that he made her abort her child, and he made her turn down roles. She was getting a lot of roles. She was getting a lot of offers for different roles. He made her turn down a lot of offers that she was getting for good roles. But she kept turning down offers. Her phone started ringing. I guess they figured they got tired of her turning down roles, so they stopped calling her and offering her roles to play. So he messed up her career. He never loved her. He just wanted to experiment around with a black woman. He wanted to experiment around and see what sex was like with a black woman. He never loved her. He used her sexually and mentally. He bossed her around and controlled her. He made her get abortion. He never left his wife and married her. He messed up her career. He just totally messed up her career. He totally used her all the way around.
it had been nearly 3 years since
I'm assuming, and after him, she married another man. She married a white man named Dennis, and he didn't love her either. He was in all kinds of debt, and he became abusive. He started beating her. So,
depressed and exhausted, Dorothy dreamed of a life out of the spotlight and turned her attention to Jack Dennison, a white former maitre d'hotel who had been pursuing her for years.
He looked like a Greek god, and she worshipped beauty. I didn't like Mr. Dennison, didn't like what he was about. He was a very cruel person, and she was a masochist. Pure and simple.
Against the
yeah. His name was Jack Dennison. He was a club owner, but he never used her. He was in debt and just wanted to use her, and he brought her money down. He was abusive, physically and mentally. He was not a good husband.
advice of her friends, Dorothy married Jack on June 22nd, 1959. But any illusions the actress had about retiring were quickly shattered on her honeymoon night. Jack confessed he was deeply in debt, and in order to save his nightclub, which Dorothy had heavily financed, he expected his new bride to perform there. The next day, they flew to New York for the premiere of Porgy and Bess, which, as the cast had feared, drew mixed reviews. Dorothy soon found herself singing at Jack's club. The experience was a sad and humiliating come-down for the struggling actress. The couple began to fight bitterly, and Dorothy Dorothy added vodka to her daily regime of champagne and pills.
Dennison just seems to have been a mistake from the very beginning. The man physically abused her, and a man who appears to have been totally insensitive to her, and a man who really sent her into financial ruin.
After a tumultuous 3-year marriage, Dorothy filed for divorce on grounds of extreme cruelty. Now 40, Daindridge found herself alone, in debt, and behind on her mortgage. She was once again in a downward emotional spiral.
So sad. A third marriage over, a man abused her, he was in debt, and just wanted to use her for money to help him with his debt. She wanted love so much. She wanted to find love, but she was looking for love in the wrong places.
My death, to whomever discovers it, don't remove anything I have on, scarf, gown, or underwear. Cremate me right away. If I have anything, money, furniture, give it to my mother, Ruby Daindridge. She will know what to do. It was signed, Dorothy Daindridge. While speculation swirled around whether Dorothy had committed suicide, her lifelong friend, Jerry Nicholas Brent,
she was trying to make a comeback, but she got together with her old manager named Earl and was trying to make a comeback. But in the morning, Earl found her. She took a bunch of pills. He found her naked on the floor. They say she did suicide, but years later, I think it came out that she had a blood clot. It came out later that she died from a blood clot. But even if it was a blood clot, she still was depressed, drinking, and taking pills. Deep down, she wanted to die. She had attempted suicide before, so she was tired yet of living, and she wanted to end it all. She was tired yet of life, so she wanted to kill herself.
made preparations for Dorothy's funeral. According to her wishes, Dorothy was cremated after a service at Forest Lawn Cemetery. Among the mourners who joined Dorothy's family and close friends were ex-boyfriend Peter Lawford and ex-husband Harold Nicholas and his brother Fayard. In her too brief and tragic lifetime, Dorothy Daindridge helped open the door for black actresses when opportunities were scarce and hard to find.
She should be remembered as a woman who really summoned up the best within herself, and a woman who really did believe that America had to change, and that the movies had to change, and a woman who believed she might be able to do that, and she did.
And although she did not live long enough to witness the accomplishments of today's galaxy of African American stars, her luminous beauty and dazzling performances continue to inspire and motivate them.
Had it not been for Dorothy, Angela Bassett, Whitney Houston, Jada Pinkett, the list goes on, might not be able to be working in this industry the way that we are able to now.
In terms of what she wanted for the race and for actors, she would be absolutely thrilled to see what's happening today.
Let's say she paved the way for many African American actresses. Even though she didn't live to see her accomplishments, but she paved the way for them, and a lot of African American actresses are proud of her. Like Halle Berry said, if it wasn't for her, a lot of them would not be where they are today. Sad documentary, sad ending, but in spite of her success, she had success, but then on the downside, she was very troubled, hurt, and wounded. It's sad that she did suicide and took her life. It's sad her life ended like that. But like I said, she inspired millions of African American actresses, and she paved the way for them, and that is a great accomplishment. I'm Mikkel. Like, comment, share, subscribe, turn on notifications. I will see you all in my next video. I appreciate all the love and support. Bye, chosen ones. Bye. I hope you enjoyed the documentary. because I enjoy showing it and talking about it. One love.